people come in all shapes, sizes, experiences, ages, dialects, etc. And as we move more into an automated world, communication still is key.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
I'm your host, Anna Melikian. I'm here to support you increase your impact while preventing burnout. The Mindset Zone is a place to pause, increase your self-awareness, and embrace the experimentation mindset. Find more resources, including information about the Mindset Zone book and audiobook at mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. Today, our special guest is Brenda Darden Wilkerson. She's the president and CEO of AnitaB.org and a leading advocate for responsible AI and broadening participation in technology. Brenda is passionate about ensuring that technology fulfills its true purpose to improve the human condition. Welcome to the Mindset Zone, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Anna. It is such a pleasure to be here.
And I really would like to start with what first drew you into technology as a way for improving the human condition?
That's a really interesting question because, and I'm gonna hit the generational button here for a bit. There are some of us of my generation, we had aspirations of what we wanted to do, but at the end of the day, we did what our hands found to do to be of service and useful. And I think that really fits in my situation. I thought I would be a doctor, was demands made on me by my parents. But when I started studying in undergraduate, I found that wasn't something that I was interested in doing. And so now what do you do for a living? And so I found that this computer science thing that I accidentally found out about was interesting and decided to pursue it. But at the end of the day, my focus in life is about people and the human condition, which is what drew me to medicine. And I found that it was important for someone to stand in the gap to make sure that the people who would ultimately either be using the software that we were creating or be impacted by it, that somebody spoke up on their behalf. Because many times I found that wasn't the case. And by accident, but by purpose, it became important for me to be that voice. Because many times in my own background, I had been that person who wasn't considered in the design of various products. And so I could relate to being left out. So I had an eye for it and a willingness to stand in and do what I could.
I love that. And you remember, so you start thinking about medicine, human condition was always there. Then you saw that you have that little skill or a lot of skill on computer sciences, and then you were able to identify the gap. Do you remember any story or any particular moment that you were, oh, this is not supposed to be like this, or that you identified the gap?
Yes, I think that when I started was back, I feel like in the Stone Ages, and we programmed almost at the machine level. And so when you do that, it's easy to get to not think the distance between the bits and the bytes and the actual humans becomes large if you are not specifically thinking about it. And I remember thinking there was one instance where we were programming a particular application for a business purpose. And I remember one of the people, the gentleman that I was working with, actually remarking about how neat what we were doing was and how interesting this technical thing was. And I remember thinking, but that doesn't have anything to do with who's going to use it. That's how easy is it going to be for them to use it? And as an engineer, engineers get like really into their design. And many times we're not trained to think about ultimately what's this person who might not look like me, may not have the 10 fingers I have, et cetera, et cetera. What might that person be like? And so again, that I'm that middle child. So any middle children out there know? We're always thinking about everybody because we're right there in the middle. We want everybody to be happy. And so I was always in this kind of what if space. What if the user isn't tall? What if the user doesn't have all their fingers and toes? What if? So it was that what if space that made me think about, okay, you're designing for you, but what if the user isn't you?
Yeah. And now let's press the fast forward a couple of decades and the beginning of the 2020s when you start to see the AI became
Yes.
come to the surface because AI, artificial intelligence, is a thing since the 1950s when the term
Yes.
was created. But I'm speaking more this new wave of it.
Yes.
So fast forward to that time when you saw all this happening, the development of technology and artificial intelligence became like the trend that everybody was speaking about. You saw your role to identify the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this term that goes, you ought to first drink your own champagne, if we use the nice term, or eat your own dog food, if you use the other term. And so I'm always thinking, okay, would I want this? Could I use this? How would I feel if I was presented with this? And I think there were examples. I took care of my mother when she was elderly until she passed away. And she passed away in 2005. So we were talking about back in that time when many of these applications started to become very common and used with people. And so I would go to the doctor with her and they thrust these devices in front of her. And of course, she'd hand them right over to me. And I'm thinking, okay, are we thinking about this population? And she was part of the boomer population, and there's lots of those folks. And are we preparing them to be served by this software that we're creating? Because it is software, right? It's not a person, it's something somebody created. And so I begin to see the potential for huge segments of the population to be left out of understanding how to do the very services that make them human, going to the doctor, filing their taxes. And again, this is the middle child in me. I'm worried about folks. And having been an engineer, software engineer, whose whole job is to solve the problems of people. That is what my definition of technology is, in service of the issues that people have, make their lives easier, solve their problems. It began to be very clear that in little bits and snatches, even in my own life where things were not working, like for instance, I won't name the phone, but a particular phone, have had that model of phone for years and years. The assistant on that phone still cannot understand me. And I'm thinking, okay, what are you adapting to if you're not adapting to my voice? You must be listening to a voice. You've been given a voice. Whose voice is it? Elderly people speak in a particular voice. Is the training data training on elderly voices or not? And what's the impact of that? Since there are fewer and fewer real people at the other end of the line, what happens when grandma calls? So
Yeah.
it becomes just this expansive concept of what if that we talked about earlier.
Yes, I love this. And I love that you go back to the 2000s because I still remember that was the time when I moved here to the United States and start to go, I would say, to the regular doctor and all of that. And for me, being from a younger generation, and I could not understand that they asked me to fulfill the same form over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
A more effective way of doing this.
Yes.
And so I welcome the technology, the
Mhm.
tablets with the information there, that not all the doctors still use it, but I
True.
welcome that. But it's equally true that I still remember when I go back to my country of origin, that is Portugal. And I'm blessed that my mom she's quite well and she adapts to these technologies quite well. But I was seeing other people like an appointment that you had to set in your phone or
Mhm.
online. And I said, there are people. I knew people in Portugal from an old generation
Mhm.
that barely knew how to read.
Yes.
So this technology was a big barrier for them. So
Mhm.
things from the different perspectives is really important. And when you were telling about voice recognition and how I still remember some softwares in the beginning 20 years ago that with my accent was
Mhm.
a nightmare.
Mhm.
Now it's incredible how the transcriptions have improved, that I can
Mhm.
get a very good transcription even with
Excellent.
accent, what was not true 20 years ago.
That's excellent. And that's as it should be,
Yep.
right? There isn't one voice. There aren't 10 voices. There are literally thousands of voices with dialects and things that we, because of the technology, should have a better grasp on, not a lesser grasp.
Yeah. So 2000s, and that was also the time that we had the smartphones, that
Yeah.
social media were start to carry social media around. And of course, the artificial intelligence was underneath everything.
Yes.
Algorithmics to choose the next YouTube video that was suggested, the
Yes.
Spotify song that came next, but was like underneath. Not
Mhm.
everybody was aware of it. And then with the ChatGPT and the
Yeah.
chatbots and the AI, we suddenly everything became artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So, what were the what ifs that start to
Yeah.
come up when you saw all this happening in the last
Mm.
6 years?
Mhm. So I think one worry that hit me was the speed with which it became inevitable that you have to use it and jobs will change and life will change and there would be this speed that was Moore's laws. The speed is just a challenge that I think we didn't anticipate.
Yes.
So if we think about other revolutions, evolutions, they took a period of years such that there was a space between, there were people who understood the transition that could help others transition because they went through it.
You are touching a very important point, in my opinion, because even if I think, I remember sending my first email when I was in college. I still remember that. And because I did that time already had a mobile computer, but not many people had a mobile
Hmm.
computer. But I
Hmm.
don't have internet. So I just had the mobile computer that was really a fancy typewriting thing that we could print from. That was amazing. So I still remember that. And then there was the infrastructure that was needed. We had time to adapt
Right.
even with social media started in the beginning of the 2000s. LinkedIn, I think, was 2003, and then Facebook 2004, and then after Twitter. But was only after the smartphones, first the iPhone in 2000, I think, in 7 came out, and that the smartphones, that suddenly, but we had like first with the computer and then with but we still had some
Right.
time to adapt.
Right.
But with ChatGPT and the like, was suddenly, literally from one day to the other, we had everything. We had the computer connected
Hmm.
to the internet. We can download it for free.
Hmm.
There was no barrier. And suddenly we
Hmm.
had this incredible technology in our fingertips
Yes.
without, oh my gosh, next week is coming a better version.
And
And was, whoa.
right. And the transition always the people have to be considered in the transition. So here I'm back to the people, right? So how do we get from one step to the next such that there were people who could train folks who are coming into the newer technology, at least on partially what they knew. But now we have this situation where there's this AI summer, like everything is AI and it's going to change everything. And so everybody is running after making sure that they're keeping up with the Joneses because the Joneses said that they're laying off 30%. So I think I'll lay off 30% where the Joneses are adapting this technology and it's working for them. And so I'm going to adapt it without the proof points that come from the iterative adoption of technology to make sure that it works. And like you said, the releases, it's every day there's a release. It's not, we don't even count the releases
Yeah.
pretty much anymore.
And it's impossible because of
Yeah.
how this is really unleash the number of softwares.
Yeah.
Anybody now can
Yeah.
really start a software company and start to do
Hmm.
their own software. The barrier to entry really was reduced. So it's impossible to know everything. It's
It
important
is.
to be aware of everything. So but we are still humans. We still have the constraints and the advantage of being a human.
Yeah.
But what I think you are also referring to is that this is creating a gap, speaking
Hmm.
about gaps, between the people that are in the know
Yeah.
and the people that didn't learn that.
And it's so easy to be left behind. Technology, it's easy to be it's always been easy to be left behind. You had to really stay apace. And I'm not so much concerned about those of us who are technologists. And that term even is changing with the advent of AI and things like chat. And you've got coding that can be done by your AI just by you speaking in English or whatever your language is, sentence to them. So the knowledge between what you're saying and what's actually happening, the gap is getting larger and larger, which gaps that create impact the errors that creates impact the human condition. And again, that's what we should be most concerned about, not just okay, we're creating this neat thing. And I'm a technologist, we like to nerd out, right? But we have to remember what the purpose of it is. And that to me is one of our biggest concerns, which is one of the reasons why at AnitaB.org we've staked our claim around what we call responsible AIs. Let's do it. I'm not saying don't do it. There are people out there going, no AI, down with AI. I think that ship has sailed. And there are good, very good benefits, great things that are happening with the use of AI. But we do have to be responsible.
Yes, I always say just because it's unstoppable doesn't mean that we are powerless.
That's right.
And what I love about your organization is that is bringing that voice. Okay, let's be responsible in the
Yeah.
way that we able to respond, in the
Yeah.
able that we use AI. So
Yes.
let's speak about that.
Hmm.
What do you mean by responsible AI?
Yeah. Yeah. So responsible AI means that we're actually taking a look at what the ramifications of the AI that we're developing or adopting will be ultimately on our purpose, right? So if our purpose is to attend to sick people, and so then we're going to adopt an AI that helps us make decisions in a flash. Okay, that's positive because now we're not taking too long and we hopefully can address someone's illness faster. But if it's error prone and it causes us to make the wrong decisions where a human who might intervene could have an impact on that, then that's not responsible. So we're trying to use the concept of an AI responsibly. Now, how do we do that? That means that we have to continue to have knowledge. We need to bring together the different segments of the population that this thing is going to impact, right? Like, for instance, when I remember in the early days of driverless cars, when they were testing the cars on people, the images of people walking down the street, guess who they forgot to test on? Anybody that was brown. So that meant that this car could be free to run into the majority of the population because the majority of the population is not fair skinned. That was irresponsible. And I'm not saying anybody did it on purpose, but the lack of consideration comes from the lack of diverse people sitting around the table. And when I say diverse, I mean different. That's the term, that's the definition of that word.
Yes,
Diverse does not mean black, diverse means different.
and it's so important because everybody, one of the things that I love to do sometimes when I'm doing workshops and speaking, and even in my book, The Mindset Zone, I use that, and I even have a bookmark that has one thing that allows us to see our visual blind spot
Yes.
that we usually are
Yeah.
not aware, but shows how our brain is
Yeah.
rebuilding the information that falls in the visual blind spot.
Yeah.
But it's a representation of our mindset blind
Hmm.
spot. And that is why we need others different.
Yes.
They are in a different place than we, because if they
Yes.
were exactly in our same experience, they will have very similar blind spots like we do. But because they have a different experience,
Yes.
they can see things that we cannot see. And if we learn to communicate,
Yes.
can learn from each other.
That's right.
That is one of the things now with this AI disruption wave that I speak about. The technologists are all in. Love them,
Yes.
wonderful. I love them, what they are doing. But if they do not communicate with the humanists and
Yes.
humanists don't communicate with them, they are seeing things very much what I like to call neck up,
Yeah.
very cognitive, very rational, and human beings,
Yes.
the body too,
Yes.
that we have to relate, and everybody has a different experience of it. And we have to bring that to the conversation.
We have to. And it's not charity. It's just responsible. So there are things that I know from my experiences that other people don't know. And there are things that they know that I don't know. It's not one is more valuable than the other. They're all valuable. And I remember when I was learning to program, one of the things we had to do was once we had our logic is we had to test every single branch. If this is true, or else this is false, we had to test every single one so that supposedly every condition was covered. And that's all diversity does. In the instance of if you're using a product like at the airport where they use the clear,
Yes,
that clear thing,
people
okay?
they identify us.
They need to identify. So what happens if people's eyes are not of the ordinary type of whatever they consider tested that normal eyes are? What if you got one eye? They put their fingerprints. What if you've not got all your fingers? It's pretty standard in its height. What if you're short? So these are the types of diversity thoughts that we need to have because people come in all shapes, sizes, experiences, ages, dialects, etc. And as we move more into an automated world, communication still is key. We have to understand it. You and I could not be having this conversation if we couldn't understand each other,
Yeah.
right?
And so tell me in Anita B org,
Yes.
tell me a couple of things that you do there with this that realize this.
Yes. As I shared, we staked our claim around responsible AI. And so what we first did around that was to say, okay, let's get the different voices together that likely have an impact on this conversation. So we got educators together. We got together founders who are creating brand new AI projects that are small startups because they are going to think from a perspective that's going to be much more simplistic because the money isn't there versus having the big guys. We had the big guys there who have the money and the resources. We had the big corporations who've been at this. Like you said, AI is not brand new. People have been doing artificial intelligence was what, 50s or at least. And having people who think that this is normal. They're like, oh, well, this is just how we do things. Okay, they're going to have a different perspective than people who are like, oh, there's this new thing, AI. So you bring all of these different people together and you have a conversation around what do you think we should be doing to make sure AI works for people? What's interesting is for some people, that was an interesting concept. People, right? Because they're thinking about the tech. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's just their focus. And then you have, like you said, the humanists, the philosophers, the sociologists, the people whose job it is to think about it. You think about having the lawyers there, right?
Yeah.
What are the legal concerns that are coming up? What's the impact on the environment? And what's the way we can do this in a way that doesn't impact the environment? So now you got everybody sitting around at the same time instead of in their bubble. And so people walked away with, I had never thought of that, right? So we filled in we opened up a what if for them
Love it.
and gave them a direction to think differently. So then when they're back designing or educating or whatever it is they are doing, they have a broader aperture. So we like to do that. That's what we call ourselves, conveners of the thinkers that will design and use the tech because we need the users there to tell us how well we're doing or not, as well as the people who are thinking about doing it. So that's one of the ways that we do it. And then right now there's this question about what does it mean to show up AI ready on the job? I think it's a huge question mark. I think companies are going, you got to know this and this, but I think they're still figuring it out.
Absolutely.
So we're bringing together that conversation and supporting the educators who all of a sudden the companies are looking at going, give me AI ready graduates.
And that is the interesting thing, because one of the things that I speak about how to adapt to this AI disruption, navigate the human side of it. And one of the message that I try in the systemic lens is every major technological development has really gave us a choice. We can see it as a better tool or the opportunity to reinvent the game.
Yes.
This is one of the opportunities of reinventing the game. Internet was not a faster post office. Airbnb is not just a bigger hotel chain. They reinvent the games. And this is absolutely the opportunity that we now have to keep playing old games and getting people even more burnout. That is not a good thing. Or reinvent the game in a way that we really can build a better future of work and of life in general.
Yes. I love that, Ina. I mean, that to me, again, is the definition of what technology is supposed to be. And if we're all of a sudden disrupting ourselves, it should be for that reason.
Yes, but we have to do it with an intention and with value base, because if we just react, we are going just to accentuate loads of unintended consequences are going to happen, and we know better.
So true. And one of the challenges with AI is the fact that it's trained on historic data. And so if it's trained on historic data, it's trained on some mistakes we made. And we have to then enter into the list of things that we have to do is checking for those errors.
And really tap into our human advantage of we have this capacity of imagine something that doesn't exist yet. Yeah. And we have to bring a diversity of voices together to speak what is that we want to create together that can be better than what we have now. And how can we use this technology to help us arrive there?
That's right. That's right. And that's when it's exciting.
Yes.
That's the table I want to sit at. That's the table we create and bring the thinkers together to say, what if we could make this better? What does better look like? First of all, what is better? And that's when you get the users involved. Is what does better look like? If you'd asked me as the daughter of an ailing, aging mother, what would going into the doctor's office look like? For instance, she had end-stage renal failure. And one of the things that if I was a rich woman, I would totally blow up the way they administer dialysis. To me, it's very impersonal. And when you're ill, you need a personal touch. But I think that's another example of a system that was set up for the administrators, the people who administrate it, not for the people who were being treated. And so it's what can we do? Talk to me as the daughter, talk to her as the patient. How could you make this better and use this technology that's rapidly evolving to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And even seeing the things from the different perspective is seeing, how do you say, they have to spend, because it's a process that takes time, and how can make it maybe opportunity to learn something, to listen to music, to do art. Why is just like being in a black hole, just while the blood is being passed through the machine.
Suffering.
No, it could be an opportunity to do something different.
Yes. Or even to behold beauty, because where it faced, everybody could see everybody else going through it. I envisioned having them all faced outward to a garden where it was beautiful and they could see, you said, listen to music, have a massage. I don't know, something.
A lack of imagination. And I think this challenge that we are facing with all this technological disruption is really a call for let's use our imagination to see a better future.
Yes, I totally agree.
So, where can people learn more about you, your work, your organization?
We are named after our co-founder, Anita Borg, and so our website is anitab.org. And so really easy to remember.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for what you do on your show. I love it. I love everything that you focus on. And so thank you so much for bringing it forth to your audience.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
If you can think of a person who will find this episode helpful, please share it. Spreading the word about the Mindset Zone podcast is very powerful. For extra resources, including information about the book and audiobook, Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Human Potential, go to mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. As always, I'm so grateful that you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.